How you doing, everyone? And welcome to Dreadnought, Gundam and more on PS4. And I just want to wish everyone out there a happy Thanksgiving if you live in the U.S. And if you don't live in the U.S., well, I'm giving thanks to you for tuning in and joining us on Dreadnought, Gundam and more on PS4. So I finally had a few days off for the holidays from work, and man, oh man, there just isn't enough time in the day. I've been catching up on stuff to do at home and connecting with friends and family, but of course, I have been playing a lot of Dreadnought and a lot of Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2, because let me tell you, the gaming is good. And we know from last week and the week before, I did have a little issue with Greybox going down to 4v4 or even 5v5, but last week they brought it up to 8v8, and I've been playing a lot, and it's been great, and I had some good replays I wanted to show, as well as some other videos I wanted to put out. But I have been foiled again because Greybox has put out yet another really good balance tweaking patch, and that would be the Dreadnought Autumn Balance Update patch. And it is really good, let me tell you. Very subtle, but some really good changes to the game that I think are all positive. And I got this news today from DN Ray on the Dread Chat, which is just great. But before we get started, I did want to say hi and thank you very much to the following players, as well as many more, for logging in and playing Dreadnought and just putting out some really great games. Let me tell you, the competition has been fierce on Dreadnought. I've been playing a little bit of GBO2 because I'm trying to get to Corporal, and I'm almost there, and I have unlocked some really good goodies, so you will expect some Gundam replays this weekend, especially from one of my favorite mobile suits, the Gem Sniper 2. That's coming this Sunday. But I've been playing a lot more Dreadnought than I have been Gundam today because of this patch, and because so many players have been coming out of the woodworks to play Dreadnought. And let me tell you, today I was playing not on prime time, but just the afternoon from about noon to 4, and I put the game down and played some Gundam, and then had to pick it up again because the games were so good, so tough. So let me say thank you to everyone that's logged in, especially my viewers and subscribers. But you are keeping the game alive. But I want to say a special thank you to the following players before we get into the patch. And that would be Dr. Bree, a.k.a. Antonio. Oh my god, what a great match we were in. Draconis is Real, a.k.a. Manny, who was in a couple matches with me, and it was really good. L Smoke 82, who is just being a really tough player to fight against. We seem to always be on the opposite side, and that would be Leonard. You can check out his player-submitted replay cast. It's really good, but let me tell you, Leonard has been punching me in the face with his giant Dreadnought lately, and it's been pretty good, but I've been getting him back, and the matches are no easy time at all whenever Leonard is around. And thank you very much, Patches 7, for doing such great healing, and General Nemesis coming out of retirement to bring the game back, and he is doing just that and doing a fine job at that. Another old-timer I know from the past who came back is Eyes Grim. Eyes Grim is coming back, and Eyes Grim is a very tough opponent, so watch out for him because he will get the better of you if you are not careful. Promethean Empire 3 coming back, Blitz Necro coming back. Both of these guys are savage, probably amongst the most legendary Brutus players of all time, and they are back. And also, let's say thank you to the Space Apes for dropping in as well, and so many more. I just can't name them all because we would be here forever and I would never get to the patch. But thank you all for playing so much and breathing life back into the game, especially now that we are in 8v8 once again. So, what is up with the Dreadnought Autumn Update patch? Well, I'm here to tell you what's going on. Now, these are very subtle tweaks to the game, and they don't really kick anything out of balance or off kilter, but it addresses some issues that I and many other players have been wondering about for some time, and that is damage mitigation. So what am I talking about when I say damage mitigation? I am saying that there are times with several modules in the game for several ships that you can become invulnerable. And for players who do not know, that's a big problem because they'll be wasting all their modules and all their firepower on a ship they cannot destroy, and even those of us who do may not have a better target, or we are being chased down by such an invulnerable ship and we are left with very few options. So that was always a part of the game. It has always been something the devs have been trying to address, but we don't want to take tanking away from dreadnoughts or certain tactical builds because that would just ruin the game and throw it all out of whack. They tried to fix it with Rupture, and I'm on the fence as far as Rupture. It's not as bad as the move to make Corvettes have armor amp that lasted for 15 seconds or longer. I thought that was ridiculous and a really bad move, and it was right around the time that the game took a nosedive in population, and Rupture was the last big new thing to come out of the game, and people were not enthusiastic about it at all, and some even thought it was a terrible move. So, the damage mitigation problem. How do we get rid of invulnerable ships? Well, this is their answer, and I think it's very, very good. Damage mitigation stacking is the top of the list for the new autumn update patch, and here's what it said. There are many ways to stack armor to give you 100% damage mitigation. As a concept, there is no such thing as 100% vulnerability, so we've capped damage mitigation to 95%. So, I'm going to spend a minute or two touching on this because at first you may say, yeah, that's pretty good, okay, but I want you to understand how crucial this is. So on the first level of understanding this change, now you have a ship that's invulnerable, and now you can do damage to it in desperation. You're cornered. Now at least you're doing some damage, so certain players, I'm not going to name them. Actually, who am I kidding? I am going to name one, Sixpack 7, because Sixpack 7 pulled off some beautiful maneuvers with this stuff that would make your jaw drop because it's unbelievable, but he would use both armor amp and armor booster pulse plus certain officer briefings to just get back-to-back invulnerability and just go in and wipe out your command ship and wipe out a whole bunch of other players and just never die. I mean, sometimes he'd be on 53 hull and the guy just would not die, just wouldn't die. So, that is no longer a thing. If you have a Dreadnought that has like 100 hull left and starts popping armor amp and armor booster pulse left and right and doing all sorts of shady things with officer briefings, guess what? That's not the case anymore. At least 5% of your damage is going to get through all those stacking modules, and even if they have their shields up, half of that 5%, 2.5% of your damage is still going to get through. And if you are boosting and everyone's shooting and everyone is stacking the damage, that 2.5% will add up and even punch through the impossible to kill dreadnoughts. And that is really cool. But here's where it gets really interesting, because on the other side, you may say, well, that's not fair. That's a nerf for dreadnoughts. Come on. 95% is really, really good. But here's the thing. A lot of dreadnought captains, me included, me especially, don't like to jump around necessarily or tractor beam people in or do stasis pulse. We like to double stack those armor boosting modules. Now, the only reason we did that is because even if you had the top tier armor amplifier along with the engineering 101 and along with slow and steady, you still capped out at about 90-something%. And so we decided to throw in the armor booster pulse to make ourselves invulnerable and boost everyone else around us. But now that we can't attain that 100% invulnerability, now it opens the door for a lot of captains to say, well, maybe I don't need both. Maybe I should start diversifying my modules. Maybe I just want to support everyone else around me and count on healers with armor booster pulse, or maybe I just want to use Retaliator along with armor amplifier to get that 90-95% along with certain officer briefings as well. And now this may introduce different types of meta for dreadnoughts who aren't jumpers, who like to just go around and pretend to be invulnerable. Now maybe they'll change up their builds a little because now they can't become 100% vulnerable, and maybe they'll be a little more careful and charge in less and start using other modules along with different gameplay techniques and strategy to get in there and change it up and do something a little different. So I think this is really, really good. And while we're at it, how many times have you been chewed up by a Nevis or a Netron and you decided to flak them or do a bunch of damage to them and they had their shields up and you just died? Well, guess what? Corvette shields are no longer invulnerable either. Now we have Corvette shields in line with the above change. We want to bring Corvette shields into the same general assumption that nothing can mitigate 100% of damage. Even an AT-AT can be taken down with a blaster if you hit the pilot in the face through the window, is what they are saying. Even the Death Star can be brought down by one torpedo, and that is the facts of life. If you don't believe me, there have been many, many capital ships on Earth in real history that were brought down by one single bomb, like in the Battle of Midway, or one single torpedo to the rudder, like with the mighty Bismarck. Yes. So, Corvette shields have been reduced to 95% damage mitigation, which means if a Corvette comes in and starts messing your stuff up and then tries to afterburner away or thrust amplifier away and then just put their shields up when they're at 100, 200, 1,000 health to get away and go hee hee hee, I'll just be back later, some of that damage will bleed through. And if you can concentrate your fire, not even their shields will save them. And maybe Corvettes, knowing that they won't have 100% damage mitigation with their shields, will decide to start using armor amplifier or other less damaging, less alpha strike modules to protect themselves and get out alive or survive long enough to deal that damage. We will see. So this looks like a slight typo. It wasn't highlighted, but I believe this is a different category unrelated to Corvette shields, and that is light flechettes and other missiles. There have been some inconsistencies with the amount of time it takes for missiles to launch and the active timer for the modules. This should now match for all missile type modules. I guess what this is saying is some missiles like flechettes would launch 40 million zillion missiles and have a launch timer of 3 to 4 seconds, maybe longer. Other missiles, such as Tempest missiles, will take the animation very, very long to launch the missiles, but it only takes like 2 to 3 seconds for the timer for the module to cool down so that you can use another module. That's not cooldown for the module, but whenever you use a module, there's a few seconds you cannot use another module. It's not at the same time, it's not back to back. There's always a couple seconds, and it states that on the module in green, and then it turns red for the cooldown timer. So if you look very quickly, whenever you launch or activate a module, there is some sort of delay in between the hitting of the button and the completion of the module before it goes into cooldown, and you can use another module next, so you can't just mash buttons and activate all your modules at once. This is streamlining the missile timer and making it less inconsistent, and I don't know if that's really going to improve gameplay, but it's nice for consistency, so that's pretty good. Here we go with Survival Instinct. This is kind of a module that fell by the wayside with some of the other tweaks and changes made to other officer briefings, and in my opinion never really was very good in the first place. So when I first leveled up the Jupiter Arms artillery cruisers, I was really not impressed with this lackluster officer briefing, and I don't think I've really ever used it except once or twice to experiment with it, and I just never used it again. So we see here it says this officer briefing was taken down a few too many notches to the point where the module didn't offer enough for the trigger risk. To pull it back, we instead reworked it to reduce reload time by 7% for each 10% of your health that is missing. This may be the survival instinct we've always wanted and never got. This may be the survival instinct that will be used more often, and it doesn't have such a dramatic effect like other officer briefings with that trigger at such a low health bar to do something really dramatic. This is really subtle. the more damage you take, the faster your reload is. So when you're down a quarter health or a little more, now you have roughly 20% faster reload. When you're down to half health, now you're looking at almost 50% or right around 40-45% faster reload. And when you're almost dead, you are looking at something like a 75 to 80% faster reload, almost double. So this is pretty consistent, and it isn't a one-shot. It isn't conditional where you hit a certain threshold and then if you go above the threshold it doesn't work anymore. Now if you get a little bit healed, it'll still take effect but not be as effective, and as you take more damage it becomes more dramatically effective. And when used with other modules and other officer briefings, this could be really interesting, something worth taking on a ship that likes its main guns for its firepower, for its main damage instead of modules, or a ship with a lot of hull that it's really hard to get to that really low stage of health, or a ship that's a glass cannon where you have so few hull points that by the time you reach that threshold you don't have time to use the officer briefing because you are a second away from death, if not dead already. So this, I may try using this on my Athos, maybe some of the other ships. It would probably be good on certain artillery cruisers with certain module combinations, but you know what? I think I would rather use glass cannon or destruction cascade to pile that damage on and get that alpha strike spike. But don't be surprised if you see this on my Athos or some other destroyers and ships, just to see if that reload time gets much better for taking maybe a quarter health or half health damage and still being in the fight and just pumping out more DPS because the reload time is significantly reduced. Next we have Armored Lockdown, again in line with the changes to damage mitigation. Armored Lockdown was giving artillery and tactical cruisers more armor than armor amp for dreadnoughts, and you know, that's not cool. For consistency's sake, we reduced this to 80% to be in line with the armor amp line of modules. And I think this is something they should have done right out of the gates when they changed armor amp, and I think that this is the way it should be. These modules should be consistent across all classes. Just make it simple so people know what to expect and you don't get these invulnerable tacticals or artillery cruisers. Sometimes it's really annoying. You sneak up on a tactical or artillery cruiser and they used to pop Armored Lockdown and you'd blow your entire alpha strike and just nothing. And then you stick in there a little bit and you start taking damage, and then when it wears off they have full energy for shields and they have all sorts of other goodies they're going to do to you, which is not good. So this makes it so there's nothing invulnerable, and while we're talking about being invulnerable, this isn't even close. This is 80%, and artillery cruisers and tactical cruisers really don't have another way to stack like dreadnoughts can with multiple armor modules. This is all they have, so they have to throw up their shields. They can't just go invulnerable to get their power back. They have to throw up their shields or maybe take officer briefings like Slow and Steady or Engineering 101 to get close to that 95% damage mitigation maximum threshold. And this means that this is all they got, and at least some of the damage is going to get through, and they can't do this back to back. I think it's a really good thing, and it keeps consistency in the game. We have Rupture Catalyst. This module didn't provide enough damage on top of its status effect to be effective, which I think many players agree with. We have increased the damage of this module to better align with the tiers of each module and the normal damage, and increased the armor reduction from 20% to 50%. That's kind of a shaky way to have a sentence, but I think I understand what they're talking about here. The effect still doesn't show on the shot, but that is a separate issue and only visual.matchmaking. Okay, it's just visual. I guess what this is trying to say is that Rupture Catalyst does more damage. I think they need to take this a step further and have Stasis Beam do more damage as well, because Many tacticals don't take Rupture or Stasis, or artillery cruisers or the like don't take this ability because it doesn't put out the damage. You're just knocking someone's armor down so someone else can get the kill. So I think this is a good trend. We'll see how it goes. But I think they need to add more damage, at least do normal damage or a little better with Stasis and Rupture powers so that they're worth taking. So right now the armor reduction is 50%. That's a whole lot of damage. So we'll see if people start taking Rupture again. I know it's very annoying and dangerous to be hit by it, but to tell you the truth, there's a lot other things out there as far as modules that I fear more. And with Rupture, when I get hit with it, usually I just retreat or find cover and knock out the person hitting me with Rupture. Because if no one else is shooting me, if I see a tactical, especially Jupiter Arms Tactical, come at me with a Rupture, I'm going to kill them first. So enough said there. Last, we have matchmaking. It has come to our attention that teams often get stacked with obvious disadvantages. We have made some changes to correct this and should result in more evenly balanced teams. We'll see how effective this actually is, but I do think there have been some problems with balancing. But for me, I've always dealt with this and it's made me a stronger player. I'm usually out there solo along with many other players. I do team up once in a while with some of you folks just to be friendly and nice and to speak with you. And I do team up with the apes once in a while, and I team up with the EU guys once in a while just to be friendly and to be neutral and to spread good cheer amongst the community, yada yada yada. But for the most part, I'm out there alone, and I'm used to fighting 2 to 3 players that are bullying me at one time, or I'm used to fighting against teams that have organized squads in it. I made some videos on it, obviously. So we'll see if this gets better. But the reality is it's really hard to get perfectly balanced matchmaking in any game. Every game goes through this, and I think you just have to become a better player. For PS4 game settings, fix an issue where settings below the first wouldn't save correctly in the game tab of settings. Okay. Matchmaking servers, we made some back-end updates that will give us the ability to better monitor when matches get stuck. This should allow us to clear them much faster and cut down on some of the lag that is seen from time to time. I think this is very good, and this is something that should have been going on all along, as well as weekly server downtime for maintenance and rebooting the server and to refresh the server. But this is something where they will be monitoring for those awful bugs that we have been getting from time to time in the last year, and I think this is only a good thing. And right here we have note about tooltips. Much of the balance changes need tooltip updates, which we will need to pass over as soon as we can. This is basically saying some of the changes implemented may not be visually noticeable in the game at first, or some changes to modules or stats for the UI, they may not reflect what is happening on the back end. So some of these changes, such as Rupture or Armor Amplifier or Armored Lockdown, even though the changes have taken effect already with the update that was patched through today, some of the information cards on the modules or in the game, their text may not reflect these changes yet, but the changes are live. So that about sums it up for the Dreadnought Autumn Update Patch Notes. And I just wanted to wish everyone happy holidays. I will be coming out with a whole bunch of replays. I got to play the game a lot after the balance patch, and I'm going to try to only do replays that are current with the meta. Unfortunately, I didn't even start recording this until 8 because I've been playing video games all day, because this is the first day off I've had in a long time during the week. So hopefully I'll be getting this uploaded by 9 or 10, and you guys will be able to watch it tonight or tomorrow during the holiday, and I think that's just great. I want to say thank you again to everyone for playing the game and making queue times today on average 2 to 3 minutes. That has been absolutely wonderful, and I hope everyone has a great weekend coming up. I hope to see everyone out there, anyone watching this, I hope to see you in Sinley Bay. Well, that's it for me for now, and I'll see you soon in Sinley Bay.